Today I'm speaking with Noel and Rick Ross. Thank you so much for joining me.
Hi.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, so I'm so glad to finally meet you. I've been looking forward to this for a while. And Noel and Rick live in San Diego, California. They've been married for 19 years. Congratulations. And they
Thank
have
you.
two children. And Noel was a second generation Jehovah's Witness, and Rick was a Baptist and a Pentecostal, but did eventually merge into the Jehovah's Witnesses denomination as well. And they're also YouTubers. I'll have the link for their YouTube channel beneath this video, so please do check them out, like and subscribe and all that. And their channel is not just deconversion kind of stuff, it's also just family stuff. So I'll have specific links if you want to go and see their deconversion story specifically, so you can go right to them. But that's what I know about you so far. Could you all tell us just a little bit more about yourselves, some fun things or your hobbies or things like that?
Well, I've been a preschool teacher for 17 years. That's what I went to school for. We also run a cookie business together. We've run it for like 6 years now.
Since 2017.
Yeah.
Nice.
For many years, that is.
We've
And
done events and all kinds of things. It's been pretty fun.
yeah.
Meeting people and people's reactions to the cookies.
Yep.
Do you have like a favorite cookie that just keeps on selling out?
Our double peanut butter, sorry, babe. Our double peanut butter cookie and then our espresso. I think the espresso has become, that wasn't an original cookie from when we first started. It's like a later cookie, but it's now like a fan favorite.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's
Nice.
my favorite, besides the peanut butter.
Mhm.
Very nice, very nice. And Rick, tell us a little bit about you. And actually, before you tell us about yourself, I need to see what's on the rest of your shirt. Can you stand up for 1 second and show us?
Sure.
The Bible, an ancient novel full of murder, corruption, homophobia, bestiality, incest, and cruelty. It is often read to children on Sunday. Nice. And very accurate.
Yes, pretty accurate.
Well, tell us more about yourself, Rick.
Well, I grew up in Los Angeles, born there, and I met her in Los Angeles later on. Pentecostal Baptist, baptized 3 times, by the way, because both of my grandmothers were different denominations. One was Baptist and one was Pentecostal. And my third baptism was as a Jehovah's Witness. Fun things I like to do. I like skateboarding. I make music. I'm a rapper. And yeah, I love traveling and hiking. And we've been doing traveling here and there, and that's been great. It's been amazing. Everybody should travel.
That's awesome. What's your next big trip when you can schedule it?
We're hoping to go to Canada. That's our hope.
He's hoping to go to Canada. I want to go back to Cancun. I don't like the cold.
Gotcha. What part of Canada would you look at? Just all of it, or?
Vancouver, what we'd like to do is do PCH all the way up and stop like in San Francisco, because I've never been, stop in Oregon, stop in Washington. Never been to Seattle. So
Very nice. I'm more than jealous. That's so cool. You could start a new YouTube channel just for your travel adventures, right?
yes.
Exactly.
That'd be
Yeah.
Very
Fun the trips that way.
Yeah. Well, in terms of my channel, I'm sure you all know, but we're here to hear your stories. I love that yours is going to be different, both because there's 2 of you, but also because most of my interviews are not with Jehovah's Witnesses, and they're not also with people who went from, the evangelical Protestant denomination to JWs. So that's different for you, Rick. So I'm looking forward to hearing kind of the nuances of your individual stories, as well as your life together as JWs. But we're going to start with Noel, and then we'll jump over to Rick. We're going to go through Noel's story of her faith journey and kind of stop and punctuate it right there before her deconversion. We're going to go to Rick and do the same thing, kind of hear your faith journey. And then we'll kind of bring you all together at the end to talk about what happened when you were married that got you out of it altogether. So Noel, take us away.
Okay. Well, my parents got married when they were 15 and 17, and then proceeded to have 5 children, like one after the other.
Wow.
Stair-step kids, literally. And that's really hard. And then she moved far away from her family, so she was super depressed. My dad was going through his own thing. It's just really hard. She was 18 at this point and had 4 children, or 3. She had me when she was 18. And so she was really depressed. And so what she told me is that she was in the living room and she was crying and she was praying to God to help her through that time. And then while she was praying, someone knocked on the door. She opens the door. It's the Jehovah's Witnesses. And so she took that as a sign and started studying with them, got baptized. So my earliest memories, actually the earliest memory that I have, is being at the convention where my mom got baptized. That's like my first memory. Even though I was like, I don't know how old I was, but that's my first memory.
Is a convention a pretty big event?
Oh, they're huge. Yeah, they're huge. That's the biggest event that the witnesses have every summer. It used
Okay.
to be like a 7-day convention, then it was 5. Now they've cut it down to 3. It's a 3-day convention now.
Gotcha. Well, let's
But
keep working until it's 0.
I know, please. And so all of us, we got really involved in it for a really long time until my parents started their own business, which I think I was about 10 at the time. And when they started their own business, my mom stopped going to the meetings and she became inactive. So with the witnesses, if you stop going out in service, so preaching door to door, if you stop doing that and stop going to meetings, they consider you inactive. So she was considered inactive. Basically, she stopped being a witness for a short time. But as a religious person, no matter what you're doing, you worry about your kids. So she was worried about what was going to happen to us in the future. Would we be destroyed because she stopped going to the meetings? So she had someone start studying with us. So we started, I have 3 other sisters and 1 brother. So all of us started studying with some sisters and a brother from the congregation. And it was from such a young age that was just, by the time I was a teenager, that's just all that I knew.
Can I ask, just from my understanding, if someone is inactive as a JW, does that imply that they've lost their salvation, or does it just kind of mean like they're under church discipline, or how severe is that?
It's the lightest level being inactive. It's because so you're not being disciplined in any way. It doesn't mean you're doing anything wrong. It just means you're not active. So you're not doing all the things that are required of a witness, which is to put in, I think at that time it was at least 10 hours a month, door to door, and to be at all 3 meetings per week.
Okay,
And
gotcha.
to go to the special events like the conventions and stuff like that. So, but when you are inactive, they usually will send like a brother out to check on you. I don't remember anyone coming to check on us, but then I was young, so
Yeah,
maybe.
interesting. Now, did you, from the earliest days though, you were hearing messages of the indoctrination from your mom and from the church?
Yes. Well, so it's kind of broken up. So when I was really, really young, like 0 to 10, we would go all the time. We were always at the meeting. I remember since there was 5 of us, and at this time you didn't have to have seatbelts. So people would help us like cram all into a car and just go to help us get to the meeting because there were so many of us. And at that time, my dad was against it. So he wouldn't go with us. And sometimes he would give my mom issues because he didn't want us to go. But once they started their business and then she became inactive, it was totally forgot, about the witnesses. But then again, I think I was 13 when I started back studying again. And our family life had been really volatile in that in-between time. And so when I started going to the meetings and hearing those messages of this is what the future is going to look like, they always show you the picture with the baby playing with a lion, So, you think, I want that life. I want that kind of peace. And that's the thing that always draws people in is that picture of perfect peace that they paint for you. Everybody wants peace. And so you do everything that they tell you that you need to do in order to achieve that. And so I did. And I would study for every meeting. So we had meetings on Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Sundays. And then you went out in service on Saturday. And if you had the late meeting on Sunday, you also went out in service on Sunday morning. So you were busy. You're always busy. And on the days that you didn't have meetings or were out in service, you're studying for the meeting or you're preparing for service. So it's a 7-day-a-week thing. You never have any free time to do anything else but to go to the meetings and to preach. But
Can I ask in terms of salvation? And I'm sure Rick will probably touch on this, but when you are in an evangelical denomination, they're going to focus often a lot on the salvation message of you're a sinner, you need salvation, you can't earn it, but God did it for you through Jesus's righteousness being applied to you. He died in your place. If you let him, as it were, cover you with his righteousness, you are saved, and you're at that point secure as a saved person. That message of the gospel, will you turn from your sin? Will you turn to Christ and believe in him as your savior? That gospel message is like the linchpin. That's how you become a Christian in an evangelical denomination. What is it? How is it different for a JW? What is the salvation message? And is that even the right question or the right way to phrase it?
It's very different for the witnesses. It's very different. Jesus, how do you even say that? Jesus isn't like, he's not top dog in the witnesses. He's like, he's down here.
He's a middleman.
Yeah, he's the middleman. It's like the witnesses, they do not pray to Jesus. He's just the middleman. They say the same thing, that you don't earn your salvation, but at the same time, you earn your salvation. Because if you're not going to the meetings, if you're not going out in service, then they believe you won't be saved. So then I am earning it, right? Because if I have to go out in service and I have to go to the meetings, then, in order to make it to paradise, basically. And then there's that scripture. Do you know what scripture that is? That they say all the time that, what is it? No, the one that says probably you might be saved. There's that one scripture that says,
Yeah.
you did all this and probably you might know, and maybe you might be saved. They always use that scripture to keep us like hanging, like I did like 120%, but it's still not guaranteed that you're gonna make it. That keeps you doing more to give 150%, 200%. It's just, it's never enough, but you always have to be doing, giving, fully immersed in it. And if you slack off even 1%, they bring that to your attention and say, oh, you might not make it to paradise. Remember, it's a maybe. It's a probably. It's not a for sure.
You mentioned paradise there. Is there a hell in their
No, the
perspective?
witnesses do not believe in hell, and they believe only 144,000 people will go to heaven, and that those people have already been selected, so that everyone else, so like of 100 people in the congregation, well, maybe one person is going to heaven, and everybody else has what they call the earthly hope, which means that you will inherit paradise on earth, but you won't go to heaven. But they also do not believe in hell.
Is the earthly paradise still pretty cool? I assume that that's still worth fighting for.
Yeah, I mean,
You never die, so
well, if you do die, you'll be resurrected. They say you'll be resurrected back to earth. But it never sounds interesting to me to go to heaven. It's like, what am I going to do? They always show them just singing. That might be fun at first, but after a while, what am I going to do?
Do they think you could fall away in the new earth, in the paradise? Like, could you get there because you did the right things in this life and you get to the paradise, but then could you still fall away there? Or is
Yeah.
yeah, but you would be taken out immediately.
Yeah, they believe that during the 1,000-year reign, that's a 1,000-year reign on the earth. And during that time, everyone's resurrected. The good and the bad, everyone's resurrected. And then they believe, so during that 1,000-year reign, Satan will be let loose to test everyone again. And so they say, so you might have made it to the first round, but there's a second round. And you might, but they do believe that if you mess up in any way during the 1,000-year reign, you're instantly just taken out of the game.
meaning
He's not playing
annihilation?
that time around.
Yeah.
What was that, Rick?
He's not playing around the second time.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
That's all.
That is quite the system. I gotta say that. I mean, I know we're touching on just the surface. I'm sure there's a lot more nuance than we're going to get to, but that's quite a conglomeration. It's funny though that when I look at that from an evangelical background, I think that sounds so weird in some ways.
Oh,
And it
yeah.
sounds like such a convoluted version of scripture, but it's like
Yes.
the evangelical version is the same. It's all confusing. It's all weird. It's all mythology. And it's just, what you're used to, but it's fascinating that they wouldn't have a hell. So do you think some people aren't as afraid because they don't have that fear of hellfire? They're just like, well, if I just get turned into dust, I won't know about it. I'll just be gone. It's not a big deal. Like, do you think some people don't take it as seriously without the hell message?
I don't think that they don't take it as seriously, but I think it makes it easier to give up, because they say that no one is perfect, but at the same time, you're expected to be perfect, and no one is perfect. We're all dealing with things secretly, and that messes up your mind, that have to present yourself in this perfect way, but everyone in the congregation, is dealing with something. You're dealing with something. And so I know many times when I was younger, when I was a kid, I was just like, I'm just going to be destroyed. What can I do? I'm just going to be destroyed. And so it gives you like these unnatural fears. I don't know a single witness who doesn't get this deep fear when they hear thunder or lightning, because you always think that that's it, that's the end.
Yeah.
And I know I'm not perfect at this point. I haven't made it to perfection, so God's going to destroy me.
So the end is going to come with lightning and thunder. So that's why they'd associate that.
Catastrophic, yeah. They show these horrific pictures inside of like the books that they have for children to study, of people being destroyed, of women with their babies like over here and they're screaming and they're like, it's terrible pictures. Like you should never show that to a child, but it's what they show you. So it's deep up here and it's ingrained.
Yeah,
So
the book of Revelation has got a lot of that
Yes,
stuff. in
they
it.
love for children to study the book of Revelation and to
Oh
show
my
those
gosh.
pictures.
wow, the psychological abuse in that group must be off the
Yeah,
charts.
it
So
is.
so as you grow up in it, even though your mom was inactive and your dad wasn't, into it that much, what was it like for you to get more serious about that, and how serious did you get over the years?
Um, it never made sense to me why my dad didn't get involved, because to me he was like such a great person. I mean, he was the epitome of what love is supposed to be and how you're supposed to treat people. So it really, I like, what's that? I can't think of the word. The cognitive dissonance that it causes in your mind to see that my dad is all the things that the Bible says you should be, but he's the one who's going to be destroyed and the rest of us are going to make it. That never really made sense. Now it does, but at the time it didn't make sense to me. But we never, even though he still supported my mother in what she believed though. So we made sure got to meetings. We never celebrated Christmas or birthdays, none of the holidays, nothing like that. Although looking back, I think it's because he wanted to save money. And maybe that was the gist of it.
I hear you there. That's crazy. So did you at some point though get so committed that you were like fearing like that your mom needed to, were you trying to at some point pull your mom in? Like what level was your intensity at the very highest point?
Well, I started studying, like I said, when I was 13, and I studied up until I got baptized when I was 15, no, 14. I was 14 and a half, something like that when I got baptized. And then I did start to fear for my mother. And slowly all my sisters got baptized. We were all baptized. And so, you think, man, we're all going to make it, but my mother's not going to make it. Because one of the things that they teach is that at the end of everything, after the 1,000-year reign is done and everyone's just living in peace and perfection, that the people who didn't make it, your loved ones, your friends, they'll be erased from your mind. You won't even remember that they existed. Because if you remember that they existed, then you would be living with sadness and sorrow, right? So they're erased from your mind so you don't have to deal with that. And I didn't want my mother and my father to be erased from my mind. And so from us going, my mom finally started back going again. So then we were all going as a family, and I decided that I wanted to serve where the need was great. Because I didn't understand why we just went door to door. I was like, this is such an important message. How come we're not putting like giant billboards out there? And like, because if you really believe that this is it, we need to be doing this in a much bigger way, right? But we weren't. And so what I wanted to do was to go serve where the need is great. So I was living in Bakersfield at the time. That's where I was raised. And I moved to San Diego so that I could learn Vietnamese and serve the Vietnamese population up in Choias Heights. And so that's what I did. I learned the language. I picked it up really fast, which I don't understand why. It's a really difficult, it's a tonal language. One sound can mean 5 different things. But I picked it up. I was really good at it. So at the Kingdom Hall, only the brothers are allowed on the stage to read the Watchtower out loud, give the talks, all that. But none of the brothers, except for one, had a good grasp of the language except for me. And so I was up there reading and doing everything, which was really cool because sisters aren't allowed to do anything. So that was fun. I started pioneering, which with the witnesses, regular publishers have to put in at least 10 hours a month. Auxiliary pioneer puts in 60 hours a month, and a regular pioneer, it used to be 120 hours a month. I don't know what it is now. 90 hours a month. And so I started regular pioneering, which at the time when I started, it was 120 hours a month. So I was 20 years old, living in San Diego, learning a new language and excelling at it, working on my own, putting in 120 hours a month out in service and working a part-time job, doing all this stuff. And
Wow.
I was dead serious. It was my everything. And then our headquarters is in New York, or was, I don't know where it is now. It was called Bethel, and it was my dream to serve at Bethel. But again, we are not allowed to do anything. And so my dream had to be altered to I want to marry a Bethelite. I want to be an elder's wife. So that was my goal, was to marry a Bethelite so I could be an elder's wife. I just really wanted to do everything that I could do to serve Jehovah, because I love Jehovah. I love the witnesses. I believed it was the truth. I mean, me and my dad would have the longest debates. They're like debates about religion. He would say that Sunday is the most divided day of the week. And how can you say that your religion is number one when everyone believes their religion is number one? How can you say that yours is? And now looking back, everything my father said was so true, but I couldn't hear it. I couldn't see it. I could only fight for Jehovah.
Now,
But
can I ask the technical question about Jehovah? Most people that I have known my entire life have always referred to him as Yahweh. I know Jehovah has to do with the German translation of it. Did they ever talk about that in church and why we call him Jehovah instead of Yahweh?
Yeah, they studied that a million times. I don't remember. We've been out for 12 years now. And even though you do the same thing over and over again, and it was a huge part of my life, you start to forget things. I forget.
Gotcha. Yeah. Well, I was just curious if they ever just came right out and said Jehovah, God has clarified to us Jehovah is the appropriate, proper way to say his name or something like that.
Well, they never use that kind of language. They always leave like a little room so that when they change things, because they're always changing things, they're able to go back and change it without, looking bad.
Mm-hmm.
In terms of them putting men up and women down, as evangelicals do too, was there anything regarding races? Did they have anything where there's kind of like from my experience, there's a lot of inherent white supremacy. Even they would never admit it, but it's kind of it's like a given in some churches. Did you ever feel that way, or were races pretty much equal in your church?
Oh no, I definitely felt that, especially living in Bakersfield. I know in the beginning, back during Charles Taz Russell and that other guy, the founder, the racism was real. Like, they put out articles themselves talking about how the African brothers, they couldn't, serve or hold any position because they're genetically inferior and things like that. That was their belief from the beginning. Now they've separated themselves from that, even though their founder and originator is the one who wrote all that. But no,
was that the whole curse of Ham thing, or is that something different?
Yeah, they believed in that too. Yeah, the curse of Ham. And
crazy.
Yeah, especially with my family, because my dad wasn't a witness, and if your father is not an elder or working towards being an elder, then you're looked down like a second-class citizen. So not only was my dad not an elder, but he wasn't even a witness. He wasn't even baptized, and he didn't go to the meeting. So they always treated us like we weren't that great. And then on top of that, we were a Black family. So then even more so, we were just kind of to the side. Really was one sister who came and studied with me and my sisters and took us under her wing and made us feel included. But if it wasn't for her, we would have just been left to the side.
So was Rick, and I'm kind of looking for the punchline of, was Rick the knight in shining armor that came to be the elder, so you could be an elder's wife?
Well, I was working towards moving up for sure.
Okay, so by that point you'd migrated from Baptist and Pentecostal to JW.
Yes, well, once we met, yeah.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Well, Noel, before we do get into Rick's story, because I know he's going to take us back quite a few steps, could you tell us kind of everything else that happened between where you left off and right before your point of deconversion?
Well, when I moved, I met a guy when I was in San Diego, when I was doing all my good stuff, right? And I met a guy and I started dating him. And because I was dating, he wasn't a witness. He was a witness. Because I started dating him, they disfellowshipped me, which I found very shocking, because no one knew that I was dating him. But I couldn't break it off with him. So I went to them for help. I told them, hey, this is what's going on. I need help. And they didn't help me. They just kicked me out. And it destroyed my whole world. It was one of the cracks in the cement of my belief in the witnesses, because we were taught that the disfellowshipping process was a loving arrangement to help you, but they didn't help me. And they make you step out of the room so they can discuss it between themselves what they're going to do. And I heard them laughing and just having a good old time. And I was like, oh, whatever they're going to say, it's going to be fine, because they're having a good old time in there. They call me back in and they tell me that they're disfellowshipping me, and I just couldn't believe it. I
Wow.
just couldn't believe it. And it took me 2 years to make it back to the witnesses. I met Rick in that in-between time. And I don't know if you're aware, but with the witnesses, when you're disfellowship, you're not allowed to talk to anyone. No one who's a witness. And as a witness, you're not allowed to have friends or to be friends with anyone who's not a witness. So then when you're kicked out, you lose your entire world. You lose your family, you lose your friends, you lose your foundation, especially since a lot of us, we work for other witnesses. If I had worked for a witness at that time, I would have also lost my job. So you just lose everything all at once, and you're expected to somehow make it back. And they also tell you that when you're disfellowship, that even God leaves you. So you're just totally on your own. And it was the darkest time of my life, but I actually met Rick 4 months into that. And if it wasn't for him, I actually wouldn't be here because I was very suicidal. I tried to take my life one time, but right in the act of doing it, my father called me. He said, "Noel, are you gonna commit suicide?" And I was like, "No, why would you ask me that?" But I actually what he saved my life. My father and my husband saved my life. And they have been the people from that point all the way till now who have been in my corner, and has really just been the wind beneath my wings. I wouldn't be here without the two of them.
That's awesome. Just for my understanding, what is the path to getting refellowshipped? Like, what do you have to do?
Go back to meetings. You have to go to meetings, and it's a really tough thing because no one will talk to you. So you come in after it starts, head down, pray to find a seat, and then when it's over, you book it out of there so that no one will talk to you. Because sometimes people won't know that you're disfellowshipped, and you have to tell them, "I can't talk to you. I'm disfellowshipped." And that's gut wrenching. It's like it's soul destroying to tell someone that, because they say, "Oh," and then they walk away from you. It's a horrible experience. I've never recovered from that, not completely. How soul destroying that whole experience was. And it was really hard to do. But I met Rick at that time, and he went to the meetings with me. I just needed someone to hold my hand and walk me in the door. And that's what he did. And we got to know each other. And I believe he's my other half from eons before. I think I've known him forever.
That is so cool. Well, I know we're probably right at the point where you're about to start talking about your deconversion, so we'll put a pin in that. And Rick, I know you got to take us back a few steps here to your childhood, but what was it like? What was your exposure to Christianity?
So my father is pretty famous, but I won't get into that. But what he did when he was younger, it sent him to prison. And so with that, there was some custody battles with my grandmother on my dad's side and my mom. And I ended up being forced to live with my grandmother, my dad's mom. And she is Baptist. And one of the rules, and you might know this, I don't know if you know this, but in the Black community, when you live in my house, you go into church every Sunday, no matter what. And so, that was the start of my Christianity. And around 12 is when I first got baptized. And I read the Bible, went to church on Sunday, all that stuff. And later on, I ended up moving with my other grandmother, who is Pentecostal. And it's funny because they always threw little jokes at each other to me. Like my Pentecostal grandmother would be like, "That is your other grandmother? Is she burning candles?" All these little jabs at each other. And so living with my Pentecostal grandmother is when I got really serious about Christianity and the Bible. And it's funny too, one of the funny things about that time is I was cleaning out the shed and there was a Jehovah's Witness Bible. I didn't know it was a Jehovah's Witness Bible, by the way. I just found this Bible and I started reading it. And I got baptized again in the Pentecostal church because one of the things they say is if you get baptized in the Father, Son, Holy Spirit, it's not an actual baptism. You have to get baptized in Jesus' name. Like it's almost sounds like magic to me, but now
exactly.
I was about 15 or 16 when I got baptized in the Pentecostal church, and during that time, I started reading the Bible more seriously, still going to church on Sundays, but it was even more because Sundays were big days. In fact, even with my other grandmother, sometimes on Sundays, you'd have the Sunday school, then the regular service, and then the evening service. And so at one point I was asked, so are you going to get the Holy Spirit or whatever? And so that was something I started really striving for. And so that's when I got extremely serious about this stuff. And I remember sometimes when there was a revival, I would be up in front of the pulpit tarrying, where you would say, Jesus, 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 closing your eyes, Jesus, 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 all for hours and hours and hours after service. And I remember I read the Bible cover to cover at least once during that time. And I read it cover to cover again later as a Jehovah's Witness. It just took time. But yeah, like, and then one of the things I remember earlier, when I was first in the Pentecostal church, I was about 11 or 12. I remember, this was not biblical related, but I said every president out loud in front of the church. And so I was very immersed into Christianity at this time, and it was my whole life. And while all my other siblings would be out doing stuff, some of my brothers sold drugs and all kinds of things. They were just out. I was inside reading the Bible and getting closer to the Lord. And yeah, this was from 14 to about 17 to 18. Around 18 is when I really started. The thing that really got me with the whole Bible thing and made me doubt was this idea of Jesus. Because when I read the book for myself, it just didn't make sense that he was God himself. And at that point, at around 18 is when I questioned my grandmother. So you believe Jesus is literally God himself? And she said, yes. And it didn't make sense to me, because what I'm reading, like John 3:16, it doesn't make sense if you're God giving yourself to the world. The language doesn't make sense, because it says he gave, the only begotten son. How can you be the only begotten son? It's like, and so she explained it to me. It's God wearing hats. I'm sure you've heard this language.
Or something like that, yeah.
She says Jesus is wearing hats. And so it doesn't make sense. It's like a play. In a play, you're dressing up in a costume.
Yeah, switch costumes.
But yeah,
That's true. I've always thought too about those passages where Jesus is talking about the end of the age, and he says, no one knows when it's coming, not even me, only the Father knows. I'm like, well,
yeah.
if you're the Father, then how can you not know? Yeah.
You have to put on a father hat, and then he'll know.
With the Baptist
Exactly.
part of my life, I didn't try to break away from that per se. I was just really young, and so it was just an easy move to Pentecostalism. And during the time of trying to get the Holy Ghost, I never actually got it. And one of the things that my grandmother told me why is that she was dating someone. I was actually dating someone around 17. And she was saying I have to break it off with her, and that's why I wasn't getting filled with the Holy Ghost. But of course, now I know that is not why. Yeah. And so, yeah, reading the Jehovah's Witness Bible at that time and reading other Bibles, it just led me to this conclusion that he couldn't be God. And so,
And then because he was reading the Jehovah's Witness Bible, and that Bible is written, they have it edited to kind of make you believe that Jesus is not, right? That the Trinity isn't real.
not really. I mean, in some parts, but the King James Version also makes it seem like certain ideas too. So I get what you're saying though, but yeah.
I thought you believed that because you were reading that Bible.
No.
Oh, that's what I thought. Also.
The John 3:16 stands everywhere in every
Yeah.
Bible. That you can't change that. But
Can I ask, did you ever get to a point there where you were, before that time frame you're talking about now, was there a time before where you like fully would have said, I completely believe, I'm not just getting baptized because they told me I need to, but like I personally accept I'm a sinner in need of grace. I accept that I can't earn my salvation. I accept that Christ is the substitute, spotless lamb for me. Yes, I take that free salvation. Did you ever do that?
Oh, yes, there was many times where I would do that. In fact, I would publicly and privately. It's one of the things that Pentecostalism, many Christian denominations teach is to fast and pray. And so there would be many days where I'm in a room all by myself, reading my Bible, fasting, and praying to God over and over. God help me. God be with me. God give me your Holy Spirit. All that stuff for hours. I mean, it was hours. It was dedication.
Hmm.
So
Was the repeated part of it though that you felt like you might have lost it, so you need to get back, or was it just to be kind of
no, it
reconfirming
was just like just to get closer to God. That was my
Gotcha.
main goal, is to be one with God and to be filled with the Holy Spirit and to continuously be with the Lord.
Hmm. So what brought you into the JW world? Because that's quite a divergence.
Yes, it is. And the thing, again, the thing that really broke me off from Pentecostalism is how they said Jesus was fully God. And so once my grandmother told me that, I was around 18. So I said, you know, I'm just going to go on my own and read the Bible, and whatever happens, happens, you know. And sometime later, 2 years later, because I was in Bakersfield and at 18, there was chaos in that city. So I moved away. I moved back to LA. And then 2 years later, I met her. And she actually was telling me about the Jehovah's Witnesses. And I had no, and in fact, it's funny, I'll take you back just a little bit. Because when I was Pentecostal, my grandmother would tell us, oh, those Jehovah's Witnesses, don't mess with them Jehovah's Witnesses. It's funny though, because throughout my time in Los Angeles before meeting her, I would have little interactions. Like one day, me and a few friends were walking down the street and there was a watchtower on the ground. I didn't bother with it, but those little things. But yeah, once I met her, then the Jehovah's Witnesses thing came into play, and she was telling me about them. And yeah, she was disfellowshipped. And so we started going to the meetings together. And one of the brothers approached me and he was like, so you've been coming here a lot. Would you like to study with us? So I said, sure, why not? Because again, at that time, I just wasn't convinced on the idea that Jesus was God. So once I went to the meetings and they were saying, yeah, Jesus isn't God. I'm like, oh, this is interesting. This lines right up with what I already believe. So yeah, I began to study with them, and eventually I did get baptized at right when my son was born in 2007.
Yeah, we moved back. We were in LA together for like 9 months.
Yeah, 8 or 9 months.
And then we moved to Bakersfield. And we got baptized a year later.
Yeah.
So you were at that point like probably feeling like you were pretty good because you're both on the same page as JWs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so this is, and now you have a shot at being an elder's wife. So that's,
Yeah.
you know, back on the table, at least long term.
Yeah.
So did that feel like you were kind of back in a good spot with God?
I was back, but it didn't feel right. Something wasn't right, and I didn't know what it was. Something wasn't right. It wasn't the same as before. You know, it's because people still kind of treated me like I was tainted because I had been disfellowshipped, and I wasn't expecting that because that's not what you're told will happen, and that's not how I ever treated anyone. Well, maybe I did, but that came back. You're just happy that they're back. You accept them back, my friends who had been disfellowshipped. Yes, but if something wasn't right, and I didn't know what it was, but when my son was born, I started struggling with depression. And I thought, oh, it's just postpartum depression. You know, I read all about it when I was pregnant. That's all that it is. But by the time he was a year and a half, 2, my son is awesome. He's an easy kid, potty trained himself, started walking when he was 9 months. It was just like the easiest baby. If you could pick the easiest baby in the world, that was him. So it's not like I struggled with him. It was just something wasn't right, and I couldn't figure out what it was. And meanwhile, he had been having some thoughts that something wasn't quite right with the witnesses, but you're scared to tell each other. Because a lot of times when one spouse is having doubts, if they tell their spouse, instead of talking to each other about it, one will run and go tell the elders,
Yeah.
and that person ends up getting in trouble. So you're scared to tell each other. You're scared to be yourself, really. I don't believe that most witness couples really know each other because you're not allowed to be yourself for fear of the consequences of being yourself.
Do a lot of JW couples divorce if one person leaves, or do they just stay and?
You can separate, like they have their reasons why you can legally separate. Like If you feel like if the other person is stopping you from being able to serve Jehovah, you can legally separate from them, but you can only divorce for fornication.
Okay.
Right?
Hmm.
So they wait until their spouse fornicates and then they and then they
So
divorce.
if you stay, is it just like walking on eggshells? Like, yes, we can eat meals together, we can even enjoy intimacy together, but we can't actually talk about God stuff because you're not on the same page. Is that kind of eggshell environment for them?
Oh, absolutely, yeah. 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 Or
Hmm.
they will separate from them because
Just too much.
that's a huge thing. That's almost bigger than any kind of fornication is to have a spouse that doesn't fully believe.
Yeah. It's
Yeah.
crazy. It's amazing too that in the Bible there are verses that specifically talk about what to do. Like in First Peter it talks about it for or I think he's addressing a woman, but he's saying if you have a husband that doesn't believe, you can win him back by being just
Yeah,
this wonderful person,
Yeah.
and your example will win him back to Christ. And it's funny how when you actually look practically at it, it rarely. I mean, I'm sure there's some beautiful situations where it worked out just like that, but from what my experience, what I've talk to people about in my interviews, most of the times Christians just hate on you. They're so angry that you left, and they can't take it, especially when there's kids involved, because now there's the implication not just that you've left the faith, but that your lack of faith is going to taint the children's ability to fully stay committed. Because now it's like, okay, well, I got a nice mommy and she believes this. I got a nice daddy, he doesn't believe that. So I guess are both paths kind of equal? And it's like, no, we need to keep the message clear. Both paths are not equal. The
Yeah.
person that's going to church is the good one. The person that's the atheist is the bad one. And that, when you mix those metaphors up and those messages up, it's like that's too much angst for a Christian. So they have to kind of get it back to Christianity is the only way to have the truth and to live a good life, for the sake of the kids, if not anything else.
That's absolutely true. Yeah. But most of them don't end up staying together. I only know one couple who one is fully in and one is fully out, and they're still together
yeah.
and seemingly happily.
Wow,
Shop.
it's
I
crazy.
know.
So you all are in this. You're going to church, but you're having some doubts. And what was the journey like to begin to open up to each other about it? Like, how did you start that conversation with each other?
Well, during my time as a Jehovah's Witness, I was still pushed to be an elder, so I strived to be what they would call a ministerial servant. That was my first step. And one of the things about ministerial servants is giving talks. And so I would start with giving, like, it was a 5-minute Bible reading in the back part of the Kingdom Hall. And then later, after about 3 or 4 of those, I did one in the front, and that was pretty big. And then I started giving talks. And I did about, I think, 2 or 3 of those. But the doubt thing, something just didn't seem right even later on in the time, because I was a Jehovah's Witness for 7, almost 8 years. And just
Yeah.
something just didn't seem right about it.
But we stayed and we just kept trying to do more. We pioneered together at one point. Yeah, I mean, because that's what they tell you. If you're having doubts, you need to dig in and do more. Do more. The more you do, the better you'll feel. But it seemed like the higher you go, when you get all the way to the top of the glass tower, you realize that it's rotten. Like when I did go to Bethel the 2 times, the Bethelites that we saw, they told us all these stories of like the homosexuality that was going on there and the wife swapping and all this stuff. And I was like, no, that's not right. This is like Bethel is like God's house on earth, right? It's like the White House on earth. Those things can't happen there, but they were. And so that was another thing that was weighing on my mind. Like, how can all those things be happening there? How can the brothers have treated me that way? How could the people that are now back, supposed to be my friends, it's been like, 7 years, 8 years since I was disfellowshipped, and I'm still not being fully treated the way that I should. It was, and then the new teachings that were coming out, when they changed their stance on blood. I don't know if you're aware, but witnesses were not allowed to take blood. We carry around these things called blood cards, excuse me, so that if anything happens, they look in your wallet and they see, oh, she can't take a blood transfusion. We're supposed to carry those around. And then they changed it to blood fractions. There's a scripture in the Bible that says the life is in the blood to pour it out. That's what they use to justify their stance. And that didn't make sense because it says pour it out. It didn't say take back some fractions, right? So why are we changing it to fractions? So we could take parts of the blood, but we can't take whole blood, but that's not what the scripture says. And so many people has lost their lives because they didn't
Yep.
take blood transfusions. If they could have taken blood fractions back then, many people could have lived. And so to me, I felt like they had blood on their hands.
Mm.
And what was it for you? The big thing for you?
Well, remember when we were sometime towards the end, before we really was like, this isn't true. We started looking at the NGO thing,
Yeah, but what?
and we're looking at the history of
But
it.
before that, though, because you never look up anti-witness stuff, you don't do it. You don't do it. But so what led us to do that? That's like a
Some
huge
of the
step.
things, one of the things for me that didn't sit right is some of their stances on marital affairs.
Oh yeah, getting into your
I
bed.
didn't,
Yeah.
because again, like I said, I've read the Bible. At that time, I've read at least the New Testament one time and the whole Bible once at least during that time. So I knew everything that the book had said about marriage. And one scriptures that they quoted 1 billion times is don't defile the bedroom in marriage. But that it didn't make sense to me that they could do anything in detail because it doesn't say anything in detail. What does that
Yeah,
mean
they
to
were
defile
getting-
the bedroom?
They were getting too nuanced and getting too detailed and inserting themselves into your sex life, basically. And for him, he was like, whoa, that's too far.
It didn't make sense to me.
That's too far. And it was too far. I remember that meeting too. We both went like this. I'm sure everybody saw.
And what
We were
with
like,
going back to an earlier question, did you fear at all that as you're starting to ask questions and doubt and double check stuff that this could have been, of course, the devil? It could
Oh,
also have been your
Mhm.
sin and your pride. But
Mhm.
either way, like if whatever it is, if they're right about the afterlife and paradise, that you might be, sort of taking that chance away from yourselves. That if you go down this path and they're right, sort of going to Pascal's wager, if they're right and you're wrong, you're not going to hell because you don't believe that, but you're still losing something amazing that you could have had that you already did have access to, and now you're giving it away freely. Did that fear factor pull you back at all?
oh, absolutely. So many times. So many times. So
That's what kept us in for so long.
yeah, I don't remember anymore the conversation that we had when we finally was like, hey, I believe I'm the one who said it first. I was sitting in front of the computer and I was like, I've had some doubts and I finally looked up things about the witnesses on the computer. That's like the cardinal sin. It's worse than murder. Like you just don't do it. You're not allowed to look up anything that says anything negative about the witnesses.
So
on the
they're not allowed to
computer.
watch this interview, basically.
Oh, no.
Right, 100%.
No, they would get in big trouble.
Yeah.
Possibly disfellowship, like you don't do that. So I finally told him and he said, yes, he was having doubts too. And that was like because I didn't know what he was gonna say. I was gonna turn me in. I know what he was gonna say, but that was a huge relief. And then from that point, together, we started searching and the things that we found were mind-blowing. Blew our minds, things that are right there in front of your face, but you purposely hide yourself from it because you're told you're supposed to. And it was like, was that like a year? A year of
It's a
searching,
long time.
reading, crying myself to sleep at night, even though I had to be at work by 6 a.m. But I would be up all night reading and searching and crying and praying every night for a year. It wasn't an easy thing. People, I hate when people say, oh, you left because you wanted to do bad things. And they have no idea the torture, the torment, the struggle that you go through because it's two fighting ideas. I mean, this one is deeply ingrained, but this one obviously makes sense, right? Which one's going to win? Which truth is going to win? This that you've been told or this that you can obviously see? This one is a lie, but it keeps me, my family and friends. This one is the truth, gives me freedom, lifts the burden off of me, but I lose everything. It's a horrible thing to go through. It's a horrible thing to go through. You lose everything in a moment. Just a few truths.
Mm. And it's a truism when you say lose everything that JWs are well known for literally the shunning, that it's very different. Like evangelicals can face shunning, but it isn't like an edict that Christians have to shun each other. It's just the way that it sometimes works out. But like in the JW world, that's actually part of the official practice, the dogma that you
Their doctrine.
have to. And I've spoken with people who I remember this one gentleman I interviewed a while ago where he had left, but his son stayed, and his son got married. His son had children, and that whole time, like they aren't talking to the dad. So this guy isn't seeing his own son and his grandchildren. He doesn't know him. The grandchildren are growing up without him because he is an atheist, and
Mhm.
it's so sad. It breaks my heart to no end. What were some of the final steps so that got you past all the questionings and the aha to like what and maybe chronologically how long ago was this that we're talking about, but when did you have that moment that you just said that's it, this is it, we're done, and also maybe if you could clarify, did that moment of we're done mean just we're done with JW's beliefs or we're done with Christianity? Like how did you migrate from
Huge
because
question.
some people will escape JW's
Mhm.
but their assumption is evangelical Christianity is the right one, and so they jump right back. You know what I mean?
Yeah. That was part of our path, but
It was.
yeah.
The thing that made us be like, this can't be true is once we looked at the complete history of the Jehovah's Witnesses,
Yeah.
that was like the whole thing with Charles Taze Russell. That was one thing, but then once we got to the next president, Rutherford, and how he was not godly in
Not
the
a
way
godly
that
man.
he took the throne, not at all. And like he built, and it was a house, get the house in San Diego in the
That's the
city.
rim. Yeah.
Yeah, and they had all these predictions that just didn't come true. And so once we calculated all this stuff, like this can't be true.
Yeah, because we really went back and we deep dived into everything. We got the Greek interlinear so that we could look up the words because we didn't know that the Witness Bible was different because they purposely edited out certain things and changed things. So we got the Greek interlinear. We would look at the words ourselves to try to figure out what these different passages meant. We came to the same conclusion as you said, or I think you said, that when Jesus was saying that
Only the Father.
no, that all these things would happen to that generation, those people that he was talking to them. He was
Mhm.
talking to us. That generation was going to experience all those things, and they did. He wasn't talking about our time. And what else? It was a lot of things.
It was a lot of things, but just the history and all that stuff.
Yeah, the history of the
And the
witnesses,
failed predictions, it was 1914,
Yep.
1917,
1975.
75.
Yeah,
Yes.
we didn't know that they predicted the end that many
Right,
times.
100%. Because
We didn't
remember,
know
when
because they
you go
always
in,
erase their history.
yeah, when you go in, you don't know anything.
No.
I didn't know anything. All I knew was let's study the Bible, you know.
Now when they change things, like when they say we've got more, what is it, more light from God or more revelation
Yeah.
from God,
Mhm.
do most people just say, okay, I guess that's the way it is, or do people get their feathers ruffled and saying, wait a second, we were so strict about blood a generation ago, and now there's new rules about blood? Like this, we were so careful and righteous to obey the rules, and now the rules are this so much looser. Like what the hell? Do people respond that way, or are they just like, all hail the leadership of our church, whatever they say is
Some
from
people
God?
do. Some people do. Like whenever they're gonna give out new light, that's what they call it. Everyone's on pins and needles. Like, what did God tell you? Like Jehovah has something new to tell us. Like we want to hear it. So everyone's always on pins and needles when new light is announced. But and some people take it and just love it, and some people end up leaving. But more people stay than leave. But they have changed so many things now. One of the core doctrines is their 1914 teaching, and they changed that as well. So they say that the people who were born and alive during 1914 is the generation that Jesus was talking to who would see all those things. And so clearly the end would come before those people died. So in our minds, and the end has to be no later than 2014, right? Because the average, if you're lucky, you live to 100, right? So about 2014. 2014 came and went, right? So around 2022, they changed it, and now it's overlapping generations.
That's how they
So that it
explained
can continue into infinity. So they just keep moving the goalposts and moving the goalposts. But that's
That's amazing.
another failed prediction, and a lot of people left over that. Not
When
a
I
lot.
was
It's never enough.
when I was growing up, we used to listen to a program that I think was headquartered out in California. It was called Family Radio, and evangelical, but it was founded by a bunch of men. But most of them, the founders passed away. There was one man that was like one of the original founders. His name was Harold Camping, and he kind of had a mantle of leadership because he'd been there from the beginning. And so even though there was other people in the ministry with him who eventually would, join, and it got pretty big, he was like revered because he was one of the original guys. And he was seen as this bastion of Bible teaching. Like whatever he said, like he had these deep insights. And he would go deep into numerology. Are you familiar with that term?
Oh, yes, yes, yes.
So he was one of these guys, but he would do that with the date setting that you're talking about. And he must have set 3 or 4 dates. And eventually people were literally like selling their homes
Yeah,
so
same
that
with
they
the
could just
witnesses.
buy an RV and put a
Mhm.
sign on the side that says Jesus is coming back on whatever, July 7th of this year, whatever. And just that was it. They're like, why do you need retirement? We're going to be gone in 3 months, just drive
Yeah.
around the US with these billboards, and in 3 months we'll be with Jesus.
Yeah,
Obviously
the
didn't.
exact same thing happened with the witnesses, especially in 1975. That was the biggest one. People sold their homes, they gave their life insurance policies, their pensions, everything to the witnesses. Didn't fix their teeth, didn't get the surgeries they needed, all that kind of stuff. And then when it came and went, people were upset because nothing happened, and they had a big convention and they blamed the people. They said the people got ahead of themselves, that they never said that 1975 was a for sure thing. But they did say it because there's articles in Watchtowers where they print it. And that's the thing with the witnesses, they write everything down because they're a publishing company. So as long as you save those old books, you have the proof of what they said.
It's amazing. What an amazing, crazy thing that people still even give them 1 minute of their time and attention. So as you were getting into this, you had children. Were you already indoctrinating your children into JW stuff at that point?
Oh, yeah. They were going out in service, and
Okay.
that was one of the things that bothered me too, is that the kids, my son, he was 3, and he was expected to be quiet in the Kingdom Hall. 3, I was a preschool teacher. I studied child development. I knew a child couldn't be dead silent inside of a Kingdom Hall, but the mothers would take the kids back, 1-year-olds, 2-year-olds, spanking them in the bathroom because they're not being quiet. It just is another one of those things, that another crack in the wall. This is not right. We should not be doing this. Kids cannot sit quiet. They should have somewhere else that they can go, not sit. Because like other religions, like the kids go to Sunday school or they go somewhere in the back, but the witnesses, no, the whole family, everyone sits right there, and everyone better be quiet.
So to
Yeah.
that other part of the question, did you go back to an evangelical Christianity towards the end at all?
I did.
Later, yeah, I did too,
Okay.
slightly.
Slightly.
Yeah, but we went to non-denominational churches and stuff.
Yeah, so we were still searching. So we had, let's back up a little bit because we like totally, we totally jumped over us leaving the witnesses. But so we did all of our research. We finally settled that, okay, we found these certain truths that do not align up with what the witness is teaching. So we wrote it all down. We called the brothers to the house. I have my list. I said, okay, we have all these questions and we really need you to answer them. Can you answer these questions? They said that's too many questions, that I can pick 3. So I picked 3 and they couldn't answer them. We went round and round, and I forget what the questions were now, but we went round and round and round. They couldn't answer those questions. And so that was that. We were still having trouble. We stopped going to the meeting after that. And so they came back at another time.
Mhm.
Same 3 questions. One of the brothers was the same, but I think the other one was different. Or there was like, this
Yeah.
time the first time it was 2 brothers. The next time it was 3. And when it's 3 brothers, that means it's serious. That means that they're like a
The judicial.
judicial, yeah. And so same 3 questions, they couldn't answer them. And at the end of it, they said, well, the important thing is this. Do you believe that the governing body is God's faithful slave on earth? And I had to say, no, I don't believe
Right.
that. If they're not telling the truth to the people, then how can they be God's mouthpiece on earth? And they were like, okay, that's all we need to know. And so because if, as a witness, if you do not believe that the faithful slave, that's what they call themselves, is God's mouthpiece on earth, then you're considered an apostate. And so I knew that they were going to announce us. They were going to, what is it called? They were going to disfellowship us,
Mhm.
but I didn't want them to disfellowship us. I wanted to leave. So we wrote a long letter explaining why we were leaving, why everything that they were teaching was wrong. about all their failed predictions, about the blood, just everything. This was
The
like a,
abuse, which is
yeah,
one of the
the
big ones.
child abuse. That was like the big thing that made this one of the big things. There was many, that was one of the big things. The rampant child abuse that we didn't know about. I mean, one of his close friends was abused from a young age
Yeah.
by an uncle who was also an elder, and nothing happened to him. He's still at the Kingdom Hall. And so we sent that to the Kingdom Hall of our Kingdom Hall, and then our congregation, and then we sent one to the headquarters. And that was it. And they would call us and call us and call us like, we just want you to come in so we can talk to you. No, they want us to come in so that they can tell us about ourselves, basically. Tell us that we're disfellowshipped and all this stuff. But we're like, no, I said, if you got my letter, then you already know where I stand. And we never spoke to them again.
Right.
Yeah.
Do they
Then,
in those cases, do they probably make a public announcement and say,
oh,
hey,
they
yes.
did. Yeah. They made a
Okay.
public announcement, but
so no one at that point is supposed to talk to you, even though you don't care as much, but they're not supposed to talk to you at that point.
Right.
yeah. But I called my mother and one of my sisters over. And at this time, me and one of my other sisters were the only ones who had kids. We both had a son. They were best friends. They were like practically almost the same age. And I told them, and I had been telling them like all along through the journey that I was struggling with this and that I have these questions, and they're like, well, let's just try to answer them together, right? But we couldn't though, because they wouldn't look anywhere other than the witness publications. They won't look online, they won't read other books, they won't do anything like that. So it just became like the circular reasoning thing, and we never got anywhere. But I called them over and I told them, what happened, and that they couldn't answer my questions. And I showed them the list. Can you answer these questions? I just need someone to answer these 3 questions that I narrowed it down to. And they couldn't either. And my sister looked at me and she said, well, I'm never going to speak to you again. And I said, well, I'll still speak to you, and I love you guys, and my love isn't conditional, and I'll always be here if you change your mind or if you ever have questions or are doubting. And they were like, okay, and they left and never spoke to her again.
Even to this day?
Yeah, it's been 12 years, 11 or 12 years.
Yeah.
We left in 2013.
Wow.
2012?
December 2013 was,
No, 2012. 2013 is when we moved here. We left December 2012. Oh yeah, because they're saying the world was going to end in December 2012. For us, it did. The world did end December 2012.
one of them anyway.
Yeah, one of them. Yeah.
So at that point, you were both concluding that JWs had some major faults, but
Huge fault. Yeah.
that's when you were willing to look
But
at
we
some other
still
denominations.
believed-
We
we
still
still
believed
believed there
in the
was a God.
Bible.
But
Yes.
then for a minute, you went atheist for a minute.
That was tiny time.
It was
No,
it was a tiny time, but it freaked me out. And I was like, no, because I was determined for us that whatever we did, that we did it together. If we left together, we're going to go to another religion together. Whatever we did, we're going to do it together. So if he went atheist for a second, I freaked out. But then he came back, and then I started studying with some born again Christians. It was actually a couple. They were studying with the both of us, right? The black couple.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And that broke me, because they told me basically if I didn't believe Jesus was God, again, if I don't believe in the Trinity, I'm going to hell. And that
Yeah.
bored me.
Yeah. And then when I was studying, I would go to the women's group. And one day when I was there, the thing that we were studying that time, they said that it's not okay to question not the elders, what did they call them? They had a different name. It wasn't the elders, but the brothers.
Apologists,
No, the brothers, the people who preside over the church. To question them.
bishops.
Yeah, and I said, that's not true, because if I hadn't questioned mine, I wouldn't be here right now. Right? And then it was like this whole conversation about, no, but they take the lead. And I never went back after that. And I studied with them for a solid year, and I had a great time, made great friends, but I was like, no one's gonna lie to me again. I'm not doing this again. I never went back. And
That's
then
crazy.
I felt lost again. I was lost again. And when I got baptized, this is going way back, but when I got baptized as a witness and I came up out of the water, I felt nothing. And I always expected that I would feel something. And so when I got baptized as a born again Christian, I was like, okay, it's because that wasn't the real religion, right? This is born again Christians. So I'm going to feel something this time. And when I would witnesses are very monotone and dry. When they sing at their kingdom halls, it's very dry. So when I went to the born again Christians, they like have that moving music and you feel like you're feeling God and and I loved it. Like that's what really pulled me in was the music and like you feel like you really feel, but you're just feeling the love of everyone in there is what you're feeling. And so I thought, okay, this time when I get baptized, I'm gonna feel something. I felt nothing. And I went home that day and I cried. And yeah, that was the end of it. That was the end of Christianity for me. I was like, I need to feel something. It feels so dead. Like there's just nothing. And so we just kept on searching. But then that's when we got into other stuff. We started researching like other religions, like
But before you
Buddhists. Oh,
continue, I
sorry.
just wanted to, what made me consider the Bible to not be true?
Okay.
Because the whole Jesus thing it's a big deal. But after leaving the Jehovah's Witnesses, we got into some ex-Jehovah's Witness groups and conversed with ex-Jehovah's Witnesses. And but before all that, I was watching a lot of debates, and there was this one debate that got me drawn into this denomination called Biblical Unitarianism. And it was Anthony Buzzard versus James White. It was a debate on the Trinity. And at that point, I was like, okay, there is another denomination out there. I never actually went to their service, but I did. I actually called Anthony Buzzard on the phone. It was a pretty good conversation. He is very down to earth. And I tried to call James White, but that didn't work out. But yeah, I consider myself biblical Unitarian for maybe 6 months or so.
Yeah, and that was like a source of contention. Remember, I couldn't stand Anthony Buzzard because he was making him not believe in the Trinity. And when I got into born again Christianity, I was like fully believing in the Trinity, and like people were showing me all these things that made me believe that it was real. And I was like, no, because we have to be the same. You can't be a Unitarian Universalist or and I'm a born again Christian. Well, it was always the thought of we have to be whatever it is, it has to be right. Because I don't want either one of us to die. And we have children now, so you're always thinking about, their souls. You want to save their souls, even if you can't save your own, you want to save theirs. And so it was always just, I want to be right. We have to get it right because I got it so wrong for 29 years. Whatever we do, I want to get it right. But yeah.
And then the thing that made me question the Bible was an ex-Jehovah's Witness, and he basically posed the question, did you even consider Jesus being a real person? And at that point, I just took a deep dive into that whole thing, looking at as much history as I possibly could. And yeah, I was like, oh, this actually is inconclusive on this guy.
Yeah, and I didn't like that. I was like, no, Jesus is real. Jesus is real.
That was hard because, like
Yeah.
she said, she did crying. Yeah, I had many nights crying because it's like, oh, this has to be. But yeah, at the end of the day, it's like
Yeah.
he may or may not have existed, and that's just the truth that no one wants to come to terms with, most Christians. But that's the truth, and at that point, this none of this is true.
Yeah. He would always like start going into things before me, and I'm always catching up. But he doesn't always tell me, but then I'm not always ready to hear it. I'm not ready to hear it. Yeah.
It's interesting the thing you just said about Jesus, whether was he real or not. They call it Jesus mythicism. And that's a really big question that I've got some different friends and other YouTubers where they almost get angry about it on both sides. Like they really are like people like, of course there was a historical Jesus. He was just made into a legend, but it was a man. And other people like, there's a lot of reasons to think he may not have existed at all. I tend to lean towards he probably did not exist, but I understand why people still fight back or think different things about it. But at the end of the day, it's like, it's also a question that once you've escaped, like if you're a Christian, it's a big deal. He has to have existed. But once you've escaped from it all, it's like a dead man from 2000 years ago. I'm not going to like lose a friendship over it. It's just like,
Yeah.
it doesn't really matter to me. It's not worth fighting over. But I know people that are they're ready to start swinging fists over it. And it's like, it's not worth it. Then this stuff needs to die in terms of both its power over us, but also just like the whole idea of the dogmatism that we all come with, such a fundamentalism of like it's my way or else you're a bad guy. And it's like, no, we can agree to disagree and then go have have a beer together, and it's all good. We're still friends, and I think that's so important to, if we can keep those, dynamics going. But once you got to the point there where you're like really, 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 really out, and you're just there's no more questions left. You're pretty much just like, this is all garbage, all versions of it. Did you feel elated? Did you feel sad? Like what? And I know I'm not mean about the shunning that was going on, but just between you and this God character, you in the sense that I know God or Jesus is up there. I know there's a plan for my life. There's a creator. To think that that person might not be there looking out for you, planning something for your life and for the hereafter. Did that hurt you? Were you sad, happy, sad? How did that work out?
Well, it was hard at first. Believing the witnesses was the hardest part. That first year of trying to understand that you're lied to and stuff, that was the hardest part. A year of crying straight. But then after that, it was just kind of like it was this up and down roller coaster of us. This is true. No, it's not. No, this thing is true. No, it's not. Just jumping from thing to thing to thing, trying to find something tangible to hold on to. And when we're lost, we just start researching again. And then we always learn something new and a new trail. And so at the end of the day, after studying everything we can think of, and we're still studying, still searching, right, for truth, we got into the Sumerians. We only heard about the Sumerians like briefly, touched on in the witnesses in the Bible, but we got really into that in the Sumerian tablets, and then finding out that stories in the Bible come from the Sumerian tablets. And so someone's copying someone's homework and it wasn't the Sumerians, right? And so what the heck? And so the history goes back way further than what we even realize as humans today. You don't know what you don't know. What we do know is that I'm here right now. And so I want to enjoy this life in this moment that I have right now and use it to the fullest. I do believe that there is more than what we see. I grew up in a haunted house, so I know there's more than what we see.
Atheists don't kill us.
Things I cannot explain. The house was haunted. And I don't know I know the the mind is very powerful. So I don't know if it's the volatile emotions of the house that can make things happen and make things move. So I know we're very powerful. Our energetic fields, our brains are very powerful. We can do things that we don't even know that we can do. But I believe there's more than this. I do not believe that there's a God that's watching me, making sure I do A, B, and C. Right. And if there is, he's not a very good guy because he's letting all these bad things happen on the earth.
Yeah.
So either way, it doesn't matter. It just doesn't matter.
Yeah. Yeah. Initially, it's always hard leaving something that you believed in and you dedicated your life to. It's very hard. I mean, it took a long time. Even just a few years ago, you still have those questions like, could it be true? Not necessarily the Jehovah's Witnesses, but the Bible in of itself. You have those doubts. But yeah, it's rough. It's definitely.
Yeah, I don't have any doubts anymore.
No, not now. But...
None. But yeah, in the past, like you have like something will happen or someone will say something and think, oh, maybe I should go to church, or maybe this, or am I doing the right things for the kids? What are we even supposed to tell the kids? You know what I mean? How do I put them on any type of a right path? But yeah, we teach them, we call it word magic, is what we've always told them, is that your words are powerful. So whatever you say is what it's going to be. So be careful what you say. You can do and be whatever you want. So dream the biggest dream you can dream for yourself. You're only limited by your imagination. And if you decide that one day that you want to be born again Christian, that's fine. I don't mind. That's your choice. I had to, make my own path, and then I'm going to give you everything I know. No, you got to do your own thing, but I will always love you and support you. But I'd say that was one of the hardest parts, is trying to figure out what do we tell our kids when we don't even know.
It is. It's an amazing journey. I've gone through it myself. When you look at how far you've come through all these stages and all these issues that you've thought through, one of the questions that I think comes to a lot of people's minds is just the trauma from everything from the shunning, but also just the actual doctrines, the theology of this. There's a lot of, you mentioned before, for example, that men are the ones that are leading the church and women are not. So you're talking about patriarchy and misogyny, probably some purity culture mixed in there, all kinds of religious trauma. The trauma when you're in it of thinking a lot of my friends and loved ones will never make it. So, there's that fear of like, this is heartbreaking. Everyone around me is probably going to go to annihilation. What is some of the traumas that you identify that you're working through, and like how has that journey been going for you all since you've been out?
PTSD. It's tough because I was born again Pentecostal, so the idea of hell was, and that's one of the things that a lot of people say. Oh, we were given what is it called? We're prosperity gospel. I always had the hellfire gospel. Like that was like Sunday, every Sunday almost. You're going to hell if you don't follow the Bible. You're going to, all that stuff. So yeah, it took me a long time to get out of that, even as a J-Dub, because it was one of those things that was ingrained in my head. So yeah, it takes time to work that stuff out. And as someone I've studied a lot of people who left, and it takes some people 10, 20 years to not have that fear of hellfire. So yeah, it takes a long time.
And there's things that you do or say or react in a certain way that you don't realize that you're still doing. That's because of the trauma or the doctrine from before. So it takes a really long time, and we're still working on it, and I'll be working on it till the day I die, I'm sure, to undo a lot of those things, especially like the black and white thinking. Witnesses are huge in the black and white thinking, and that has taken me so long to see that I carried that with me for the first several years, many years when I left that black and white thinking, and just and being able to view people as people, because when you're witnesses, it's us and them. So even when I left, everyone was like an alien. Everyone was still a them, and being able to see people as just another person. They're just like me. I'm just like them. They're not this whole other thing. It's so hard to take off those Watchtower colored glasses and to see the world and people the way it really is. So yeah, it's that black and white thinking and thunder.
Yeah, and also
Fear of thunder.
leaving the Jehovah's Witnesses and losing friends, it
Yeah.
changes you, because it's like, okay, so now I don't have any friends, because once you're in, because I had many friends before, but when I got in, it was like I had to stop talking to those people. And I gained a whole new ball of friends. And once they realized I left, they all was like, well, too bad, we're not going to be your friend anymore. Because I would go to I would have they would have like volleyball at the park, and there'd be like groups of Jehovah's Witnesses playing basketball. We would play basketball together and stuff like that, watch sports together, all that stuff. And once I left, it was like, nope, we can't hang out with you anymore.
Makes
And
it hard
so,
to make friends.
Yes, it makes it very hard to make friends. It makes it very hard to be social again. It takes a lot of time to get that stuff back to where you want it to be.
Yeah, you don't trust anyone. You don't trust people. You don't trust people with your heart to not break it and to not just drop you like a bad habit for whatever reason they decide, right? Who knows what the reason is going to be. So I have a very tiny circle of friends, and I would say I'm not a very good friend because I don't call. I don't try to hang out, but it's just it's just really hard, especially being disfellowshipped, having to be on my own like that for almost 2 years. Just coming from that experience, it was hard to make friends again. It was hard to look people in the eye, because that when you would go into the Kingdom Hall, you can't look at anyone, you sit down. So after that experience, it was so hard for me to look people in the eye and hold eye contact. It was hard. I couldn't do it anymore. It felt like too much.
With your YouTube channel, have you had a lot of pushback from you sharing your story?
Yes, from her family.
Yeah.
They did not like it.
Yeah.
I'll let her.
Well, that's just it. They didn't like it. And I was like, well, I didn't say anything that about you guys. It's about the witnesses. I told them I have no gripe with them. If you want to be a witness till the day you die. That is fine. I still love you and I still want to hang out. But they were like, no, all this stuff. And I said, okay, well, if I take it down, if that's the real big problem here, if I take the videos down, then can we hang out as a family? No. Well, then I'm not going to take it down because we're actually helping people.
Right.
Yeah.
The first video has over 30,000 views.
Yeah.
And
It was-
I think one of the big things, like we were saying earlier, was the blood thing. That was just such a weird thing, how they keep piecing this stuff together like that.
Yeah, it's just a big old mess, you know. I haven't talked to my family in so long. My kids, they do see that side of the family twice a year. My parents divorced shortly after we left. No, right before we left. I don't know.
Around
At the
that,
same time, yeah, that happened at the same time. And so my dad lives on his own. So I always take them down to see my dad, and then my dad will take them over to see my mom. So I never wanted to stand in the way of them having a relationship with my mom and that side of the family. My thought is that time will tell, and they will tell on themselves, right? As they get older, they see that they don't treat me right, that they shun me, that, you know, they tell on themselves. And now my son is about to be 17, my daughter's about to be 14, and he has expressed to me the past couple of years that he doesn't necessarily feel comfortable going down there anymore. He said, "Why would I want to go hang out with someone who wasn't nice to my mother?" Like, yeah, that's exactly right. But I don't badmouth them or anything like that in front of them. It's not necessary, and it's not right either, because then you put emotional trauma on children. But you know, time will tell. They'll tell on themselves, and they have, and they'll see for themselves.
Yeah, it's amazing. I'm amazed by the bravery that it takes. I know that my journey felt brave in some ways for me, but I know that from what I can tell, the JW journey is exponentially harder for most people, with the implied or directly required shunning. So I just want to commend you all for the bravery it took to do that, and I'm so glad you all were able to keep your marriage together through it all, and stay close through it. That's such a big part of this, and obviously to protect your kids' minds. What a beautiful blessing to give to them for the next generation. So just a lot of heartache, but a lot of good stuff too woven throughout it. And I'm obviously just glad that you escaped and can live your own lives and reclaim your identities. I feel like we did cover quite a bit, but was there any other topics that I didn't ask about that you wanted to get to kind of round out your story, or any other comments to wrap us up?
there's a few little things that really made me question the Bible. One of them is this idea that you can't be a good person without the Bible. That never sat right with me, especially after meeting atheists, because there was a time when I never spoke to one, and eventually I did over the years after leaving. And yeah, it just didn't sit right with me. What? You can't be good without God? That didn't make sense to me. And yeah, that was one of the bigger ones, because again, I know good atheists. I've always known them once I actually got into that world.
It's so funny too when you think about what the Bible's morality actually is. When you're like, it's got genocide and slavery and child brides and stoning and land theft and genital mutilation, and you're like, so now that I'm going to reject that book, I'm the one with no morality? Like, are you
Right.
kidding?
It doesn't make sense.
But to them, that's the way they see it. It's crazy.
And the other thing that's funny too is during my time as a Jehovah's Witness, I would send tracts to my father in prison. He has always been
The voice of
I don't know about an atheist per se, but I don't think he would be against it. But he's always been anti-religion, and his mother has always been a devout Christian since basically till death. And yeah, he was one of those people in my life that most kids usually will grow up and realize, wait, they were right. They were right.
Our fathers were very similar.
Yeah.
Yeah, very similar.
That's awesome. And Noel, did you have any other final thoughts that we didn't get to yet?
Just that, I guess one of the things that because I know we skipped out a lot of stuff because it's a huge story, but we did get into like numerology, spiritism, got a Ouija board once because we really wanted to see, like we tested everything. Right? Like people say Ouija boards will do this. All right, let's do it. So like we wanted to see, like really see everything. So there's like, I don't think there's anything that we didn't try to test to see, is this true or not?
I guess we never slept in a haunted house with candles and a star on the ground.
No. But we did get a ghost in the house. We did.
We had
that was a terrible
experience.
Do not play with Ouija boards. Don't do it. Don't do it.
Did you get any words spelled? Like, did you say, what should we do tonight? And it says pizza spells pizza or something?
No, nothing ever happened. So we were like, oh, this doesn't work. This sucks. Close it, put it back top of the closet. But then things started like flying off the shelves and knocking things across the room and stuff like that. That kind of stuff started happening. Hearing a little child laughing in the middle of the night, like just really spooky stuff. So we threw it away. And when we threw it away, nothing else happened after that.
And
Strange.
where we lived, there was like a cavern, and there was a ton of trees, like a forest. And there was one time I remember at night, there was a little girl laughing. This was
In the woods, laughing in the woods.
2 in the morning.
She
Again,
shouldn't be there.
it's such a weird occurrence, but yeah, we got into a little bit of everything, really. As the Bible says, no stone unturned.
Yeah, we left no stone unturned. We looked into every religion, every school of thought, everything, trying to figure it out. And the conclusion is we're here. We have to live this life.
And nobody knows.
And yeah, nobody knows. Yeah.
But I miss Hitch, that's for sure.
Yeah,
Sure,
absolutely.
you know Hitch. Hitch was great. I miss him.
Yeah. There's a YouTube channel that's got a clip up from one of his speeches, and it's just called Atheist Anthem. I'll put the link for it beneath our video in case someone wants to watch it. But I go back to that every few months just kind of because it's so inspiring. And yeah, his words are just like they burn into you and make you want to change the world, make you want to make a difference. So let's go free some minds.
You have to make a difference now, not, just let the earth be. That was one of the things too that I didn't like, because the witnesses, they don't give to charities, or if you see a homeless person, you don't do that. They say that's a no. Don't do anything to try to improve the world. They say that's like putting a brand new coat of paint on a sinking ship. That's what they always say. And so when I left, that was the first thing I did, was donated to something, started giving homeless people money or food or whatever that I had, because that is our job. That is what Jesus did. That is what we're supposed to do. We're supposed to help each other. We're supposed to make the world better now for ourselves, for our community, for our children. Otherwise, like, what are we doing? When there's a homeless person, the witnesses will give them a tract or like a little pamphlet. What are they going to do with the pamphlet? They can't eat that. They can't clothe themselves with that. That never made sense to me. So that is something that's really important to us as a family.
But they can start a fight with it.
Yeah.
Well, a lot of evangelicals too would be against doing too much in terms of recycling or just taking care of the planet, because they're just like, I guess, yeah, take care of it because we're here, but it's all going to burn soon. So why bother? The new heaven and the new earth is coming soon. So don't get too caught up in this whole save the planet stuff. It's like, it's all going to burn. And it's always fascinating to me how they're kind of, basically giving their kids a worse planet when we could all be working harder to keep it nice,
Yeah.
So, well, I appreciate you all so much. Thank you so much for being here. I just want to encourage everybody again to go please check out their YouTube channel. I'll have the link beneath this video. And Noel and Rick Ross, thank you so much. It's so great to get to know you, and excited about your YouTube channel, excited to see what you all do with it over the years as you keep on hopefully getting some of these topics and roundtabling them. But you all are just, you're a powerhouse. I love too the way you all work together. I can see you all kind of like finish each other's sentences and think alike, and that's just such a beautiful thing for a couple to have. So thank you so much. Awesome to get to know you today. I really appreciate your time.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you. Have a great day.
You too.
Have a good one.